100%, 100%, 100%. No cap. No one can do what I do, do what I do, do what I do. Yeah. I'ma show you what I got. Here's what I got. Here's what I got. Yeah. Supernatural, the new original.
Hi, I'm Marty.
And I'm Jade.
And we love to tell the stories of women who are sitting in spaces and places that are making dynamic impact.
That's right. We're talking about women who are working for billion-dollar brands.
Or creating $1 million companies.
That's right, you guys. This is Behind the Brand.
Stronger, better, powerful, 100%. I'm the true, I'm the new original, 100%. Stronger, better, powerful, 100%. I'm the true, I'm the new original.
Say to the down keepers, the sun slappers, the self-soilers, the harmony ushers, even if you are not ready for the day, it cannot always be night.
Welcome to Behind the Brand, the stories of women who work for billion-dollar brands or are creating million-dollar brands. I'm so excited to have Latoya with us today, who is the Director of Racial Equity. Did I say that right?
You got it.
For Intuit. I can't wait to just dig into her story, dig into your title, and exactly everything that you do. So thank you for being with us.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So tell everybody, let's just start where you are. How did you get to this title? What is the work that you do? What's the impact that you're making?
Yeah, so this is a first of its kind role inside of Intuit. Yes. So I'm the first director of racial equity, and the work can be summarized into three major components. The first is I serve as driver for our racial equity advancement leadership team. We call it the REAL team. Mm-hmm. It's an all-black employee team that's focused on improving the employee experience for our 14,000 employees worldwide. So that's the first pillar of the work.
Yes. How does that make you feel every day? Doing
that's why I'm here at Intuit. It's because I have this role and I'm able to use the Black employee lens to make improvements for all employees.
Have you always been a person who was little Latoya? Have you always been a person who said, I want to make change? Were you rallying around, fists up? Who were you?
I don't know that I started that way. Yeah. So little Latoya grew up in Slidell, Louisiana. I'm a middle child of three. I have two sisters, so of three. And I think my beginnings were always, I was always the why kid, the kid that always asked the questions why. Mm-hmm. So very curious and wanted to know the reason behind the reason. So for me, reading and writing and investigating and understanding why people did the things that they did was always important. So I think that component of the work has always been there.
I think that's so interesting with the work that you're doing right now, and how you were curious, and how so often who we show our parents we are is really who we are meant to be. Yeah. What were the things that you were involved in? What were your accomplishments as a young child?
As a young child, I'd say for me, the biggest accomplishment was probably building off of that curiosity and reading and storytelling. I love to sit with my grandmother and my aunties and hear the stories of the family or what was happening in the family. And for me, journaling. Always writing things down as a child. That's how I expressed myself more than having conversations. I keened in on listening and then translating the things I heard into stories.
That's so critical, such a critical skill for life. When you think about especially how you explore corporate America, and how you can translate or sell your idea in. Yes. So you go off to college. Where do you go to school?
Southern University and A&M College. So I attended a historically Black college for undergrad, and my major is in business management.
And so what were you doing in undergrad? Was you
everything.
Bopping? What were you doing in undergrad?
I was doing everything. So my journey to college was a little bit different than most people. For me, in high school, looking at colleges, did the whole college tour thing, and I selected the school I thought I wanted to go to. Mm-hmm. And my mother, who was also a alumni of Southern University, sat me down and said, well, you can go to that school if you want to, but you're also going to have to get a job because I can't provide the out-of-state fees to cover your tuition. So if that's something that you want to do, you can, or you can go to Southern University and I can pay for that fully, right? And you won't have to get a job or do anything else. And so for me, I wasn't sold on Southern in the beginning.
Okay.
Most of my education up to that point was in majority white schools. And so, you know, other than being at home, I wasn't in a full Black environment. And so for me, I had some concerns. I was like, I don't know that I want to go there. I want to go to this school.
Yeah.
And she said, well, make your choice. I'll support either choice. You can go out of state to the school that you want, but you'll also have to get a job, or I can fully cover if you want to go to Southern. And I started investigating and hearing these stories of Black excellence and seeing other people who were Southern graduates and asking them, what was your experience like? And they talked about the community, and they talked about the professors, and they talked about, you know, the football games and all of the extracurricular activities, but also the lessons that they learned that helped them really bridge the gap and make the moves that they wanted to make. And so, and then seeing my mom as well as an alumni, I was like, okay, I got to do it. And it's the best choice she ever made for me. That's what I tell everybody.
But were you like, did you feel like an imposter when you first started in that environment, especially since you hadn't been educated in an environment like that?
Yeah, I don't think I felt like an imposter. I didn't know what to expect. And so for me, it became this beautiful thing. I quickly connected with someone at orientation who became my first roommate. And they introduced me to all of the friends they already had. And there was this instant sense of community and this ease, if you will. I could feel myself relax when people weren't questioning what I was wearing or my hairstyle choices, and we were connecting in ways, it was almost instant connections. I was like, okay, you know, I can do this.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. You know, similar to you, I didn't go to a historically Black college because I thought, I've never been around that many Black people before in that setting. So that seemed intimidating for me. But I love how when you were in community, right, it was embraced, right? It was like you were with your cousins.
Yes, it felt like home. It felt like home. I could easily get in and figure out what classes I wanted to take. There was already this social community. I could easily find people who were into what I was doing. And there was also this openness to try new things. So for me, it made it a great experience that I thought wasn't going to be a good one. So I was super excited, and I'm better for it. I think everyone should have that experience.
I love that. And we're so passionate about HBCUs at Boston Media anyways, with the programs that we have, and I love that more and more people are embracing that HBCU experience. So okay, so we're in college, we're about to graduate. What's your gig?
Oh, my gig was easy. So I interned throughout my undergrad with General Motors and accepted a full-time position with them.
What?
I did not want to interview or deal with all of that hustle and bustle at the end trying to find something. I secured it pretty early, and I was like, that's where I'm headed.
What made you take that approach of being prepared? Like, who helped prepare you?
I always remember my mother saying, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. And so that was a lesson that always played in my head. And so I was the one on campus that was interviewing sophomore year for internships and opportunities so that I could create a path of having some security when I got to senior year. I didn't want to join I was on a campus of 10,000 people. So I didn't want to join the other 3,000 that were trying to graduate and fight for a handful of opportunities. So I started early, interviewing for internships and looking for ways that I could build off of my on-campus jobs to find other things to do.
But the foundation that you had, it seems like you had a solid foundation in place that really prepared you. Because when I think about the generation right now, I mean, they're definitely prepared in such a unique way, but they have the lessons of aunties, of grandmother, of mother that have really been able to be instilled in them. I think that's beautiful that your mom was your foundation in that sense. So you get to General Motors. What are you doing there?
Running 2 production lines, creating steering gears for trucks and buses.
Say what?
That was what I did.
What did you learn there?
Oh, I learned so much about supply chain management. I learned so much about motivating people. I learned so much about OSHA and unions and culturally just the differences. Moving from Southern Louisiana, I moved literally like 4 days after I graduated from Southern Louisiana Louisiana to Saginaw, Michigan. And it was summertime for them, and it was, 50 degrees, and they were out in shorts, and I was wearing everything I could to stay warm. So the cultural changes as well as everything I learned in the job was amazing. So I moved from Saginaw, Michigan, and into Seneca, South Carolina, and worked for Tyco.
know Seneca.
Yes, near Clemson.
Yes.
Yeah, so I lived there and worked for Tyco International in their Kindle Healthcare division. So moved from automotive, but took that supply chain management with me and started working on healthcare devices.
What pathway were you on in your career there? Did you continue to see yourself? I'm gonna continue to build. At that point, what did you see yourself doing?
So for me at that time, I enjoyed the key theme for me was the people connection. Mm-hmm. So I enjoyed leading people, and production supervision was giving me a way to do that. So for me, that was the focus, like stay on this people train and see where it can take you. And then ultimately there was this opportunity where I had to decide, do you want to go from production supervision into superintendent and stay on the supply chain kind of train, or do you want to do something different? And for me, I wanted to do something different.
And so you left there, and where did you go?
So I interviewed for a job with Procter & Gamble for a purchases job, and moved from Seneca, South Carolina to Cincinnati, Ohio. Yeah. And I spent 12 years in Cincinnati, Ohio doing a variety of purchases jobs, and then ultimately landed in HR at Procter & Gamble.
And where were you at along life? Were you married? How were you balancing life and having this amazing career?
Let's talk about life. So I met somebody in undergrad, and we dated all throughout undergrad. And when I was in Saginaw, Michigan, and when I was in South Carolina, we were still together. So we dated for about 7 years, and then he proposed.
Wow.
And so, I'm in Cincinnati. We got married. I'm in Cincinnati. He's living in Washington, D.C., and that's how we lived for the first year of our marriage apart. Wow. And ultimately, he decided to move to Cincinnati with me. And so that kind of put us in the same place. And he made the decision also to join Procter & Gamble. And so we were both P&Gers for a while. He started looking for a job, and that's ultimately what brought us to Dallas. And so he found a job, and I came as a trailing spouse with him to Dallas. And so we started our life here in Dallas about 9 years ago.
When you came here, were you still working for Procter & Gamble? Or
I was not. I made the decision to leave Procter & Gamble, everything that I loved, and start fresh and new here. So I took 5 months off from work and got my husband, and at the time, 2 girls. I have 2 daughters.
I'm a new mother. Okay. It's really hard out here in these new mom streets. I'm not even gonna lie. Everything has to be planned out in my life. Yeah. How were you navigating working in corporate America, building these, both you and your husband, building very successful careers and raising 2 daughters?
It's a lot, but you can do it. So for me, the keys are planning, having one calendar for business and personal. Yeah. So you can look at everything at one time. And I think the other thing is clear communication, and this expectation or this management of who's in and who's out. Yeah. Like who's parent on the ground and who's back up, and just tagging in and out when you need some help and support.
Yeah. And so you were doing that, and you came to Dallas, and you were like, all right, 5 months in, I'm ready to go back out into the war zone, into the war zone. For
me, what I wanted on my resume was an opportunity to be the chief HR officer somewhere. Okay. So I took an opportunity with Tupperware Brands and ran their beauty control business. So about 250 employees and 68,000 independent sales consultants. And I did that until they made the decision to sell the business, and that's what brought me to Intuit.
You have a full spectrum career. Like, why did you want to be a chief people officer? What was the motivating factor there?
So for me, I think it's 2 things. The first thing was I wanted the experience of being the highest ranking person and responsible for the full HR suite. Can you recruit? Can you make compensation decisions? Can you design and create an organizational strategy, own training and development, anything from a donation and philanthropic, can you do the full HR suite of activities and manage the team on a grand scale? I hadn't had that experience in my portfolio, and so I wanted that to round me out as a true HR practitioner.
Okay, so now we're at Intuit, and we're the director of racial equity.
Yes.
How did you get there, and what made you want to take on that responsibility?
Yeah, so I started at Intuit as an HR business partner for our Plano site, and then my role evolved into an ecosystem partner. That's an HR business partner for the entire business, working on specific projects and initiatives. One of the projects that I was working on was connected to our diversity and inclusion organization. So I had the opportunity to work with the chief diversity officer, and he started talking about this, potential for someone, or a role, if you will, to be made available to focus on the employee experience and how to improve it. So in my ecosystem partner role and working to support some of his DEI initiatives, I just started this relationship with him and sharing insights. Hey, we could do this and it could probably have this impact. Or did you look at this piece of data? Will you give consideration to this? And so we started creating this relationship, and then the role became available. And I was like, that's my role.
Yes.
It's my role. That's what I do. I know how to do that. I have ideas. I'm closely connected with the employees, and 2 years later, here I am.
I think that in your full spectrum story, what really has resonated with me is your foundation, right? The foundation of just being curious. And then in your curiosity, how you've been able to storytell, negotiate, how important that is for someone who may be listening, who is in the middle of their career, how those soft skills ground you in the performance that you're gonna have for your future. And then how you talked a little bit around the insights you bring to the table. I think sometimes we miss that, right? We want the promotion, we want the place, we want it right now. We have not done the groundwork, and your story tells that full story of the groundwork, the insights, the evidence of the impact that the insights can make. And I think that's, as a Black woman who's thriving in corporate America, we have to make sure that we're equipping this next generation with those tools to think, hey, it's not gonna happen overnight.
Right.
And what we just heard from your story is that it didn't happen overnight. But in time and through everything that you've learned along your way, you've been able to be a part of this organization that you are really making instrumental impact.
Thank you for that. I think, whenever I talk to anybody who asks for advice, I say 3 things. The first one is play the long game. If you play the short game, there's a higher probability of you burning out. Because you have to keep coming up with strategies and keep doing, what's the next short. Play the long game. The other thing for me, just building off of your point on the foundation and that curiosity, is ask questions. And one of the things that I've learned in my 20 plus years in corporate America is closed mouths don't get fed. And if you're not able to articulate your value, no one else is doing that for you. So you need to make sure that you really take that time to reflect and write the story of what your contributions are and practice it in the mirror. There were many days when I was in the bathroom talking to myself about what I was delivering and practicing it, and then having that conversation with my manager or having that conversation with a key stakeholder, and then raising my hand and saying, that's my job. Because if you don't do that, the opportunity passes you by, and then you're saying, well, Latoya's in my job, right? So creating those moments where you build off of that curiosity and actually articulate your story so that it's connected to your long-term goal. I don't think anyone knew when I started at Intuit, my goal was to work in diversity, equity, and inclusion. And at the time when I started, equity wasn't even a thing. So for me, it's, playing that long game, thinking through what those talking points are, and being the author and the teller of your story.
Well, we have thoroughly enjoyed listening to your story, Latoya. Thank you for just giving us a little snippet on your career, your journey, and that someone else can see the woman behind the brand of $1 billion company. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. My pleasure.